Howdy, I'm your host, Nate Shear, and welcome to the show. This is Mind Force, the podcast for love, life, and learning, where your mind matters. Today we'll be covering the topic of grief. I somehow lured my very own mother to be on the show. Say hi, Mom.
Hello, glad to be here.
There's Mother. So we're going to open up and have Mother tell us a little bit about herself and how she got interested in the topic of mental fitness.
Mental fitness. Well, I always wanted to be a school counselor many years ago, and it's something I always wanted to do, but I never saw what was up ahead, that I was going to have to maneuver mental health at the most severe level of losing a loved one that was just so dear to you. So it put a whole different perspective in mental health. So yes, I got in it, and that particular deep level, not on a journey that I was wanting, or they always say you don't want to be in that club or that group. But I found myself, and by the grace of the good Lord, I feel like I have done the best I could, and hopefully been there for my children and grandchildren. So it's definitely something that grief is definitely a journey, and to each and everyone, their journey is different. But hopefully we can come alongside of each other and be supportive, because you'll get through. Somehow.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Sometimes you're thrown into it and it's forced upon you. So we've had some great conversations on the show so far, and sometimes you don't get to pick and choose or choose what happens. So this is definitely one of those situations. We're going to start off with a question for me to make sure this is conversational. So Mother, what's your first question?
My first question for you, son, is what tools and strategies have you used in your grief journey as we went through that really tough season in our life? And we're still learning and growing from it and healing from it. So what tools and strategies have you used in your grief journey?
So for me, I think the biggest thing is probably perspective. It's pretty easy to get down, but trying to keep everything in perspective and realize there are bigger and greater things that are going on at any given time. And so talking to more people, being more social, and understanding what everyone's going on. We'll talk later in the show. Mother's going to talk a little bit about you never know what people are going through. And I think that's a really important thing. For me, being a social person, getting out and talking to more people, realizing not that things are better or worse for anybody else. It's not a comparison, it's not a competition, but understanding that there's a lot of different things going on in the world, I think really helps you understand that it's not as bad as it could be, or things like that, even though that does kind of sound like a comparison. But really just understanding there's a lot of things going on, and just having that perspective where you could be without power, you could be in a third world country, there's a lot of different things, you could be going through war and poverty and a multitude of different things. So just trying to keep a perspective of the greater things going on. So the first question we have for you, Mother.
Yes.
Where does this journey begin? Tell us the origin for this particular story.
Well, it was started in, I believe, 2013, because we got the final diagnosis of cancer for my best friend, my husband of 20 years. Nate and I, we were just him and I for a long time, and weathered all the storms, and I went to college, and we kind of grew up together. So definitely have a special place in my heart. And then I got remarried, and then 20 years later, my husband was in the Air Force, and then we moved from Klamath Falls. We moved up to Vancouver, Washington, and he had a career at BPA, Bonneville Power, and we were just living our lives. And Nate has two younger siblings, and so he was kind of out the door already, doing college and different stuff, and he was in the Air Force, so that was really cool. We got to experience that together. but when you get the diagnosis of cancer, you just, I think it was kind of strange for me because, we're fairly healthy and active, don't smoke or drink, and you think you're doing all those things. And then we were at home and my husband came out of the office and he said, the doctor was just wanting to check. He had some lymph nodes and things that were inflamed, and he had a benign tumor in his lung when he went into the Air Force when he was 20. So 20 some years later, then he gets diagnosed with, well, I'm jumping ahead of the game. He comes out of the office at home at our home, and he said, the doctor says, I have cancer. And I always thought in the movies and stuff, if you have something really severe, that the doctor is going to say, hey, you guys need to come in and we need to talk to you. But telling somebody over the phone you have cancer just kind of set me back. And I just looked at him and I said, what are you talking about? And that was the part of my journey that affected my whole life and my children and my grandchildren and future daughter-in-laws to come and son-in-laws. So that's where that started. And I had to make a decision. Are you going to fall apart? Or are you going to be a warrior? Because my relationship to the Lord is the most important thing to me. And anyway, we had prayer and we prayed over my husband and we had people come over and pray over him. So the journey was, are you going to trust and you're going to continue to be brave? So I feel like I've had to keep moving even when I didn't feel like it or I was afraid. So that's where that started. And that journey took 2.5 years and then 2.5 months in hospice. And that probably is a whole nother segment there. But we had the Red Cross bring Nate home twice. And and so there was the hospice care in the home. So he could be at home when he passed. So that was a long journey, and now it's been 7 years. So that's what put me in this particular, club that you don't want to be in. But now I can be there for other people, and I have feel like God's blessed me with being able to talk to other ladies, and I think it's important to be able to share your story and be able to share your loved one too, because you're still living. You're still here in the land of the living, and I think you need to do that for yourself and for your family.
Yeah, I do find it very interesting how things are different than movies and TV shows and things like that. You see a certain situation play out, and you think it would be that way. It's pretty interesting that the people that deal with cancer on a normal basis must become callous and things like that to be able to make that phone call and just kind of conduct business that way and move on with their day. It's kind of interesting that they see so many cases that people almost stop being a number or of just another situation, or maybe in the amount of time, there are a multitude of different things that were going on. So I guess there's no way to know what that doctor was going on. What was going on with them.
That is true.
But that is very interesting. So a robocaller. Mother, what's one lesson you've learned that everyone should learn in their life?
One lesson, you only get to live once. And I think that I have experienced that the times that I've been sad or discouraged, I think of what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I get to make new memories. They always talk about the new norm. And early on, that really kind of bugged me. It's like, oh, your life is never going to be the same. Yeah, for sure. It's not going to be the same. But what's the new norm and what do I get to do about it? Make new memories. So if there's a holiday, do your traditions that you always have done. Make new ones. Anniversaries and birthdays, they say that first year is just really hard. Well, they forget to tell you that it maybe the third year or maybe the fifth year, because now things should be back to some type of normalcy, but it'll never be the same. So make it your own. Find things that bring you joy. Go do things. I've been traveling even though I was afraid to travel the first time, or Nate and Adriana, they got me to skydive. I never thought I could do that. So I have a bucket list that I need to get back to. I'm checking things off because truly I'm living not only for myself, but for the memory of my loved one that's passed on, and to be there for my kids and grandkids and my friends. I mean, I have just been blessed. God has just blessed me and blessed me. And I saw that so much over the course of my life that, as I said, my relationship to the Lord is important. So I look for him in the blessings and what he's trying to teach me in something. And again, live your best life. Do things you enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's something that's super important, and I think people say it a lot of times, but I think when you get to a point where you're able to reflect back on that, live for the person and live the way that you believe you would want you to. I think that's something that's super important, because you can imagine, there's people that wanted the best for you, wouldn't want you sitting around and having terrible days, weeks, and whatnot. So there is a time to process, time to grieve and move through that. But staying in that position for too long, I don't think any of these loved ones would want you to stay there for too terribly long. So definitely got to figure out how to process and be able to move on, which is easier said than done, of course.
Yeah.
Got another question for me?
Yes. Your other question is, what got you into wanting to do a podcast?
So I really wanted to write a book, but I don't feel like I have the best writing skills. And so I'm going to go with play to your strengths. I've been talking my whole life, stumbled across some report cards while we were home recently, and every single one of them said I talk too much. I've been talking my whole life. Figured I put that to some good use. Kind of funny, they try to move me around to different locations, try to get me to stop talking. I just saw a shirt recently. It was pretty funny. It said, doesn't matter where you put me, I'm going to keep talking. So you can move me in the classroom, but I'm going to find a friend and continue my conversation no matter where it is. So really wanted to try to help people. I think one of the most difficult things with losing my grandmother and losing people along the way is kind of that feeling of not being able to do anything. So this is something you can try and encourage and help people along the way, and being able to help people instead of feeling like the opposite side where you're not able to really do anything. So maybe one day I'll write a book. Hopefully I'll look back and listen to this recording, and this will prompt me to write the book. That'll probably be the next hill to climb. But for now, we're just going to be having really deep and important, very serious conversations, and hopefully will help some people along the way. So the first section of this episode is going to be understanding grief. So Mother, can you help us define grief and how it connects to mental fitness?
Okay. Let's see. I took some notes because I kind of wanted to remember what I wanted to say, because I think it's so important that depending on the intensity of the loss, I think that's important as well, because when we think of loss, we think of, okay, you lost a spouse, you lost a grandparent, but other losses are included, right? You lose a job, you could mourn that. You could, a transition from a divorce, that could be a loss too. That could be something that you're grieving. Relationships, so they play a very key aspect in your life. And when you have a loss like that, it affects your whole life. It affects your internal dialogue, what you're feeling inside. It affects, your physically, that could be anywhere from just feeling achy or a headache or just numb or shocked. And I think those changes, affects your whole person, like your emotions, you're kind of like on a roller coaster and how to balance them. So it's impacting not only your home life. If you have a family, you're a mom or a dad, you have to go to work and you have to have those relationships, and then your relationships with friends and family. So the mental health part of it is your whole being able to have that self-care to kind of get back into some type of balance. So it's important to discuss the importance of mental health with grief is to, get that healing that you need. It's how you perceive it. It's how you process it. And processing is different for everyone. No one should ever tell you should be over it, because everyone processes differently, and coping with it and accepting is different. It's different for everyone. It's okay to feel the way you're feeling, because grief, that's a natural response to how you're feeling. And so let people come alongside of you. Never go it alone. And take one moment at a time. I think that's important. Even just getting out of bed, just give yourself a time limit. It's okay to have a good cry. Maybe you're going to cry 3 or 4 times a day for a while at the beginning, but at least know that you're getting that out. Speak of the person, work on the things that, with your mental health, if it's something that you can do, even if you're going for a short walk, or you're just going out to visit one friend, or just make it your self-care, make it your own, and don't give yourself a time frame. Just take it one thing at a time, and it will get better, I promise.
Okay, so you touched on some of the common emotional, physical, and cognitive responses to grief, and also a little bit of the connection between grief and mental fitness. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on how society and culture influence this grieving process?
I was thinking about this when we were talking about this, and I don't think we talk enough about it. And then when we do talk about it, like, I'm a school counselor, but even prior to that, when we go to the doctor for all these different things, we go to the doctor when we're sick, we sprained our ankle, or, we have the flu, or whatever it is, we go to the doctor to get relief, right? But when it comes to mental health, it seems like it's harder. I think it's harder to jump through the hoops, because even some insurances, when you do try to jump through the hoops, it's harder to, they want a screening, and they want to check this. And I'm thinking sometimes people just really need to be heard. They just want to be listened to. And they don't want the stigmatism that, oh, you're unpredictable, or, we don't know how to handle that. So I think we need to be comfortable with people going to the doctor to get mental health, because that's a routine, that's a regular thing, and it's okay to seek help or treatment. So I think that's important. I think we need to embrace it a little bit more, and see the signs in maybe coworkers and stuff, and just ask the questions. How you doing? Is there anything I can do? I mean, ask those questions to seek a little deeper. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting how we've gotten so disconnected, where we're involved with other people's lives to a certain extent, but there's a large portion where it's taboo, and you can't pry, and you can't ask about things, and you can't talk about things, which is really odd, because like you had mentioned, you have the appointments that you have at medical. I mean, if you rolled your ankle or something,
yeah,
you'd openly be able to
absolutely
talk about that. Oh, I rolled my ankle. They gave me some Motrin. I'm going to start doing physical therapy. I'm going to make sure I stretch myself out and make sure my ankle's good, and I'll be good. Like, you'd openly be able to say that. But when it comes to the building of mental health, you walk into that building or drive anywhere near it, it's like, oh, you don't want to tell anybody you're going. You don't really want to be seen there. You don't want to park there or have anybody, catch you walking in or out, unfortunately. But that's really why we're here. I mean, really, that's the ultimate goal of these conversations, is to just keep having them. And hopefully it gets less and less weird, and, we'll get it all squared away, and it can be a part of our lives. Hey, I got my appointment. I'm swinging by the therapist. I'm heading home to talk to this person or that person, and really be able to have those open discussions, as long as it doesn't get abused. I think that's another thing. We haven't really talked on the show yet. We talked about it briefly with Senior Master Sergeant Arnold, retired. But that's another thing that could be an issue, where someone's using it to have a mental health day, to get out of work, or different things like that. We need to make sure that we're using it appropriately and things like that, because all it takes is one person to ruin it for everybody. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
You do need to be able to take those knees and take a break, but hopefully we're not getting a point where it's getting abused. So next part we have is the personal grief experience. So could you share a little bit about your personal experience with grief and how it impacted your mental fitness?
Yeah. I think I kind of said that I'd already touched on it a little bit about my personal experience.
Can you share your personal experience with grief and how it impacted your mental fitness?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that earlier, a little bit about that personal experience. Kind of what I was thinking was that my experience with grief and mental health was that being the youngest out of five, I had older siblings that are quite a bit older. So I always experienced like different things. Like I didn't know my grandfathers, they passed early when I was young. And then my grandmothers too. So that didn't really, I wasn't close to them. And so I didn't have like necessarily close friends or anybody really close to me, experience maybe from a distance. So I thought I was doing really good. Like, okay, and I've really experienced, haven't experienced that deep intensity of loss and grief, with the mental health part of it. And then my mom, but she was older, she passed away at 76 and she went in for open heart surgery. So that was the beginning of my mental health with grief. It was something that, okay, she went in, she, didn't come out, but it didn't, the procedure didn't work with the open heart surgery. And I feel like the good Lord blessed me with giving me peace that she was going to go home and she's going to be in heaven, because I wanted her to go home. So I worked through that one, and we went to Hawaii that same week because we'd already planned it for a year, and my sibling said, go ahead and go. So I had to work through that. Like, you get to go on a vacation and I'm numb. It's like I'm in a fog because, I was close to my mom. And so that was very interesting. But I had my husband at the time, and I had my family and the kids, and we were over there. So I was relying on my relationship to the Lord again, and just quietness. We would just go walk on the beach. I wouldn't even have to say anything because I was processing. So that was the beginning of it. And then I kind of had compound grief a little bit, because then it was my niece passed away, which I wasn't close. So I helped my sister through that. But my husband at that time had cancer. My brother passed away. So then, and that was coming because he had been sick for a long time. And then my husband passed. And then my dad passed. So you see where I'm going with this? I mean, the compoundness of I've had to work through many different things, but the hardest was my husband because he was younger. I think that it was hard to accept a little bit because it affected my children and grandchildren. And so, yeah, I have been on a journey, and I feel like just one day at a time, and letting the healing process take its place, and not be afraid to cry no matter where you're at. People will handle it. You just say, I'm good. I'm just working through it. Go through the natural responses because it's part of your healing on grief.
And since we're talking about insights gained from navigating grief, I think that's interesting that you'd preface it before, and I don't know if you knew you were going to come upon it or not, but you had said earlier that every grief is different. And so it's interesting because you mentioned 4 different ones in that situation.
Yep.
And all 4 of them being different. So I think that's a good reminder. I like to foot stomp things when I can. And so that's a quick foot stomp here to remember that they're all going to look a little bit different. And so that response to it should be a little bit different as well. So that is good. What are some emotional coping strategies you have?
Well, I wrote those down because I thought I want to make sure I can remember everything, because I think it was important that, what did I do when lost my husband? I think the most important thing is I always remembered growing up or whatever, you could have a good cry, just don't stay there too long. And what I mean that, I literally mean that. Give yourself a time limit. And that particular one probably was a little longer, different, periods, but get out of bed every day, put 2 feet down. And even if you go to the grocery store or you take a walk around the block, but the things that I did, I know I did too much retail therapy, and that is a thing because they kept saying, oh yeah, people do that. And I'm like, okay, I don't need any more shoes or purses or jeans or anything. So I finally, cut myself back on that. But getting fresh air, get out and get fresh air. And I'm a light person, so I just needed to have the shades open. And every time I really sometimes felt depressed or just discouraged, I really did feel like the sun would come on my face. And I feel like the Lord was blessing me, because that was the one thing that I just thought, I'm going to be okay. And just take a deep breath. I know that sounds like silly things, but just take a deep breath and let it out and enjoy the sunshine, get fresh air, friends and family. People would pick me up for lunch, or they would go for a walk with me. They would call me. We had some meals, and we had people bless us with just financial, just gifts and whatever it was. We were blessed. So keep busy, fresh air, walking, look forward to something. I think it's important to have something in the future that you're looking forward to. So that's important. Get out of bed every day. Good cry. Watch a funny movie. I mean, my kids would say, "You watching that movie again?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm watching it again. It makes me laugh." If Instagram makes me laugh because people do silly things, then that's what I need to do. I need my heart to feel again and laugh again. And so that's what I did. So, and grief just takes time, one moment at a time. Go through the process. What works for you may not work for someone else, and what comforts you may not comfort someone else. So to kind of be aware of that. Does that answer? That's pretty good, or what do you think?
Absolutely. So I do want to note, Mother has bought 3 pairs of shoes this month. So she said she's fixed her retail therapy, but might still be working on it.
I'm still working on it.
Nike, man. Nike hits her hard, so she's got to have good walking shoes.
Yes.
And I love The Office. Speaking of, watching things over and over. So I've watched The Office through and through 2, 3, 4. I don't even know how many times, but it's one of those things where you just leave happier, and it's just one of those things that's so good. You can watch some scary show or some other show where you feel, like one example, I used to love The Walking Dead, but it's depressing. They walk and they die
for sure.
and all that stuff. Like, they're never getting out. It kind of puts you in a weird funk. So find some shows or things where you're going to end feeling happier than when you started. Always a good time. I want to touch on one last question in this section. I'm sure it's mentioned and said a lot, but I want to hear your thoughts. So what are the importance of seeking support during the grieving process? You're supposed to seek support, but what are your thoughts on the importance, how important that is to seek support?
Well, I think it's important because, like I mentioned before, don't go it alone. It just... your internal dialogue, you can trip yourself up pretty good, just being sad and, this is never going to change. But if you have a different perspective, and sometimes that needs a little bit of a boost, you know what I mean? So I definitely think that's important, to...
Yeah, that's definitely important. Those social environments and things like that. I think some of us, will say we're introverted or extroverted, but I think as humans, as animals, we're just social animals in general. So I think there are some times where you got to recharge if you are that introvert, but there's a certain element where you have to get out and be able to communicate with others. I know Kyle helped me get through my first assignment. It was a little rough, but we had our AFCAFs where we drove over to Starbucks, got in the car, word vomited and kind of got out a bunch of stuff and a bunch of vetting. And then, the car doors opened, we got back and got out and we were good to go. But it was just having another human to either bounce ideas off or vent and things like that. So even if you are more introverted, you still need a social environment to some extent. It might look different. It might be a shorter amount of time, but I don't think you can skip the social interaction altogether. It's not healthy, and it's not going to help you, be able to process and move on. So sounding board is definitely important.
Yeah,
I think that goes back to the guy I was talking about earlier, a little bit of that perspective too.
Yeah.
Someone might be able to tell you some other things that are going on and give you a better worldview. I think that really helps. We're going to move on to our next section, which is supporting others through grief. So what are some coping strategies that helped you navigate your grief journey?
Well, the retail therapy, which I I realized I was doing it, or maybe I didn't realize I was doing it as bad. So that kind of needs to, keep an eye on. Don't do any large spending or anything right at the beginning. I'm serious, because some people, if they do get into some kind of money or whatever, just be cautious. Have like Nate said, a sounding board, or run something by somebody, because when you're hurting, don't make big decisions like that. Just take a little bit of time to be processing, and I'm just trying to think of the other things that I talked about, but making connections, maybe try to start something new. Or I did the grief share at the beginning, and that is a group that gets together with people that have lost a loved one. And I have some, friends. I have one girlfriend that I did a Bible study with that lost her husband. And so we had gone to a few of those. And so it was interesting when I went to that one. It's called Grief Share, and it's at a church, and they have a video, and they have a book, and you go through, and there's the different stages of grief and stuff. And the first time I went, it was so interesting because I was young, because my husband was young. And so these older ladies and even men are in there, and they're hurting so bad that I could give back because I know what it feels like. And, they're tender and I'm tender, and you can talk with them and listen with them, and you can cry with them. So it's actually kind of therapeutic, because you could feel like you could give back. And then that same friend, we went again not too long ago, and it's been 7 years, and we were in a totally different season. These poor ladies were just going through the grieving process. And so we could help them, we could be there. But then it was a little hard because we've already moved on. And not that we can't be there, but it's a little tough because we're trying to stay in the present. And I forgot to say that too. Try your best to stay in the present and look for the good in every day. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Definitely got to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
So I guess that demonstrates the importance of empathy and some of that active listening, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to touch on do's and don'ts when supporting someone who is grieving. So you got this group, you know somebody had asked or said earlier, ask somebody if you do identify someone is, or you stumble across it. How do you go about that? What are the do's and don'ts for supporting someone?
Well, the do's are definitely, like you had mentioned, is the listening. Like, stop talking. Don't do the talking. Just come alongside them, let them talk, because they're going to share. They're going to say, their emotions. That's that empathy part that, you kind of touched on. Put yourself in their shoes and let them know that you care and that you're there to just listen and sit with them. I think that's just so important, and to let them know that you're there. Now, if it's a grief share class or whatever I was in, maybe get their number, maybe take them out for coffee, or, bring them a meal, or is there something I can do? Because people that are hurting aren't necessarily going to reach out, So I think that's important when we talk about our mental health, is you reach out. If you're in a season where you're kind of in a good place, reach out to the person that maybe won't reach out. I'm telling you, those are times where that really helped, where I didn't even want to talk or go out or whatever, but just that they had made that effort, I did. And then once I got out, like I mentioned, just get out and make that connection, you start to feel better. So,
those are some great do's. What are some of the don'ts?
Oh, the don'ts. Yes. The don'ts are things like, like feeling like you're one. They don't mean to do that, but share your story and then say, oh, it's just a season, or you're saying something that they may take it as, you don't know what my season's like. You don't know how I'm feeling, because every journey is different. And,
Which goes back to the empathy, I think.
Yeah,
the connection and the active listening.
Absolutely.
You could say a lot of cliche things.
Yeah.
This too shall pass.
Yeah. Don't say that. Or, sometimes they want to compare it, like, sometimes the heaven thing bothered me. Well, they're in a better place. And, that doesn't make me feel better now because, I miss them, and maybe you felt like they shouldn't have gone so soon or something. But I think sometimes they mean well when they say these different things, but it doesn't always feel like it's being well received. So be careful how you say things, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just posted a video on the Sheria's Positivity Facebook page. It was the Brene Brown video, but one of the things she mentions is you can't have empathy if your phrase starts with "at least." And so the example she uses, someone lost a baby, and shit. Well, at least you can conceive. That's not the way to go about it. You just need to be quiet, actively listen. They want to find that connection in another human. They don't want to do comparisons. They're not trying to like move on at that exact moment. They're just trying to process. So the logical, well, at least this, fill in the blank. The logical. The logic is not there at that point. The processing needs to happen. So
like, this must really hurt. I'm really sorry that you're going through this. I can't even imagine. Whatever you're going to say that it makes them feel like that they're being hurt, or that you're caring. You're letting them grieve. It's okay to grieve with them.
Yeah, and it's pretty difficult. I know I've tried to, send words to somebody, and, what I normally say is what I'm feeling, which is there are no good words, because I feel like people want to fill in and say the right thing. And so the thing that I'm feeling at the current moment for that person is that there is no good words. And so I hope that comes across correctly, because I don't want to try to fill it with a cliche or fill it with something to try to just fill. Just that it's too difficult, but processing and healing will occur. So how do you offer help to someone without overwhelming them? It's like you had said, you've gotten to different spots where you just don't want to talk, don't want to do anything. So do you just rip them out of the house and make them go do something? Or is that too much?
I guess I would be, for that example, don't have them like, where would you like to go to eat, or what would you like to do? You don't want to make any decisions. You're overwhelmed. You can't even think. Say, I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to pick you up, and I'm going to take you out for coffee, like I mentioned, or hey, I'm going to come over and we're going to walk at whatever time. Like, not be forceful, but just, and then they know what to anticipate. And then I think that once you get out the door, your friend or the person that you're trying to support, and you don't want to push too much, because I've been in situations where I've tried to talk to a person that lost her husband, and she was not processing. It was Aunt Debbie's friend, and we went and we visited with her, and it was pretty severe. So you are more gentle. And she didn't want, no matter what you did, she didn't want to reach out. She wanted just to stay at home. She wanted just to go away, but it wasn't going away. So we were open when she was ready. So sometimes you do kind of sense that, make sure the family's watching the person or making the connection. So I think you'll know in the situation what you need to do and how to do it. You know what I mean? Because it depends on the person.
That's a perfect segue for our last question in this section, which are, what are some suggestions you have for creating that safe and supportive environment?
Something fun and comfortable. If it's a friend that lost a loved one, like, what would they like to do? Would it be just to go to the waterfront or whatever and get ice cream? And, you're just trying to get their mind off of it so they can just be in the present for a moment. And because people say, well, how do you do it? And sometimes they say, take one day at a time. No, I say one moment at a time. When you're grieving that severe, loss or compound loss, you need to take one moment at a time. So laugh with them the best you can, cry with them. Find something funny as well. I think it's important to see your senses. If you get them out of the house, whatever time of the year it is, see what's around you, what you're hearing around you, the sounds and the smells, what you're seeing and hearing, the senses, I think are important, that it's the present helping them stay in the present and their friendship. They'll know that you love and care about them. And if you can hug them or, just squeeze their hand or whatever, but you literally, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I love you. They know that they can count on you. I think that's how you do it.
That wraps up that section. That definitely puts a bow on it. And we're going to move on to tools and resources. So first question in this section, how does the 5 stages of grief model apply to real life? So we talk about it, people have heard it. How does it apply to real life? The 5 stages of grief.
5 stages of grief. Well, I've definitely been through those. So let's see. I wrote them down so I make sure I didn't miss them. The 5 stages are denial. You just don't want it to be true. Anger. Yeah, you're going to be angry. I've done a lot of venting. I've had a good conversation with the Lord, and I was upset. And I think that that's okay you have to get those emotions out. You have to get them out somewhere. And they might not be pretty, but it's okay. Processing. Bargaining. I don't know if I exactly did this one. I'm trying to think, bargaining, I would have done stuff different. I think that's more guilt, I think, did I do enough? Could I have done things different? And let's see, the 4th one is depression. That definitely is in there. You're just going to have your ups and downs. And acceptance. And I would say 7 years into it, I do have acceptance. I know the one thing Nate had asked me is something that bugged you. People would say, well, my daughter used to say, there's a reason for everything. And early on with the grief, that was really a stinger. It didn't feel good. I'm like, yeah, okay, everything has a reason. But the acceptance part of it, they would say, well, with grief, it'll soften. And I remember one of the nurses said that too, that you're gonna, whatever she said, but that in time it'll soften. And I was thinking at the time when, probably with the anger and, yeah, it'll soften. Yeah. Thank you. This is a lifetime of, hurt. I mean, I never hurt so bad in my life. I never cried so much in my entire life. It just comes. Then you throw in menopause in there, and it's just a double whammy. So that was hard with the it'll soften. But 7 years later, I can honestly say it's softening. It hurts. I mean, my husband's in my heart no matter where I go. My mom, my loved ones. But it does soften, and it just takes time. It might take a lifetime, but it softens.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that's important to remember. Another foot stomp is it never goes away. Some people want to say it'll clear out, it'll erase, it'll delete. It never really does that. It just kind of softens. That probably is the best verb. Remember, there was one time I was driving to work. It had been many, many years after Grandpa Clyde had passed away, and a wave of emotion hit me. And it's kind of interesting because they say you don't know when or how it'll pop up, but it's one of those things. I was driving to work in my 6-speed stick shift, and it was a random connection back to Grandpa Brian. Sitting in a old dirty field in a Toyota pickup, shifting through the gears, learning how to drive. And it was just very interesting for that wave of motion to come out of nowhere, because I love shifting through the gears, and that's something that I'm only able to do because he sat and spent a bunch of time with me.
That's cool.
Starting and stopping and starting and stopping. So sometimes it does come out of nowhere. It can be many years later, but it does pop up from time to time. But that acceptance is important, so you're able to process and move on. I'd like to make sure we highlight some online resources, books, or organizations. You touched on one. Do you have any other resources that are available for people out there?
Yeah, that one, the Grief Share, that's at the local churches. When I was going through everything, my local insurance agent, she'd lost her husband to this lung cancer. He was Navy, and he was around the same age. So she gave me option B, which I'm a little tired right now. So I'm like, I had that all down to who that was, who the author.
The book you're talking about?
Yeah, I had it all wrote down, but it's really good. She was like a COO of Facebook, and her husband was Survey Monkey CEO or something, but he passed away when they were on vacation. And so she,
Sheryl Sandberg?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. And so she goes over that, and I haven't read it in a while. I probably could read it again. And there was another book that I will get back to Nate and let him know it was very helpful, but I'm on vacation and now I must be processing because I'm not thinking about it. I will give him that information on that other book. That was really helpful.
Option B is by Sheryl Sandberg, Adam Grant. A lot of people have heard of Adam Grant, so he is involved in that book. So it looks like a really good one to check out. I did want to make one note. The 988, the new suicide hotline, that Lifeline provides 24/7 free and completely confidential support for people in distress. So it includes prevention, crisis resources for you and loved ones, and best practices for many people in the United States. So if someone is at the worst part of their life, in that depression phase, I want to make sure we put that plug out there, not to bring a dark moment to this episode, but just make sure people have the resources they need. So thank you, Mother, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
This was a great time. I want to give you a chance to provide any lasting takeaways. If you could pick one thing for the listeners to hear and take away and put into their lives today or this week, what would it be?
Live your best life, because that's what my grandson Zika says. He says, living my best life. And that's what I want to do. I want to have joy. I know I have my moments. I still, even today, every once in a while I get a little teary-eyed and I feel a little lost sometimes, but then I go, no, I'm not lost. I am right where I need to be. And I want to live my best life and just enjoy what I can and stay in the present. That's what I'm working on. Live each day and find something to be thankful for. So, yes.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Being able to get this out and probably helping one or many people along the way that'll be able to jump on here and listen to this. Encourage people to jump on, listen to this episode and any previous episodes as we continue rolling out these important conversations. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Let me know what's good, bad, and indifferent. Jump on Serious Positivity, the Facebook page, or check out this podcast on Buzzsprout, and we will keep having good conversations. Can't wait to see you next time. I love you all.